Hi, my name is Kristen Schrock, and I'm in the EDUC 699 class for Morningside College, and I'm here to present my final research presentation. It will be over a comparison, looking at a comparison between co-taught versus regular education teaching with elementary students' math achievement scores. I chose this topic because I'm in my 6th year of special education, and I am a part of the district's um, implementation committee, and we are trying to get co-teaching up and running, I guess, at our school in a more efficient and consistent manner, I guess. Um, and so that is why I have chosen to look more deeply into the benefits of co-teaching and how to effectively implement that. The biggest problem I have found is that it is a fairly new model for our school, and so not a lot of teachers have background knowledge or prior experience using this technique and method, and so it can be kind of scary and I guess a little unnerving when going into something and trying to use it in effectively in a day-to-day classroom. Looking at some of the literature that I used, one of the biggest things that I found was looking at the NCLB Act of 2001, which is the No Child Left Behind Act, and then the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 2004. Both of these acts were comprised of requirements that all students have access to the general education curriculum, and this includes students with disabilities. So co-teaching can be used as a tool to ensure students with disabilities still receive that specially designed instruction and support just in the general education classroom. It also creates a heterogeneous classroom climate and kind of takes away that stigma that special education students are different and should be separated from their peers. There are many different styles of co-teaching. The five biggest ones are team teaching, one teach, one assist, or some people call that alternative teaching. We have parallel teaching, station teaching, and then lead and support. For this, the purpose of this study, the general education teacher and myself chose to use the parallel teaching, one teach, one assist, and then we also did some team teaching as well. And here is the graph on the left there, and it shows that the different types of it. To start out, most teachers use the lead and support, which is where one teacher leads and then the other teacher supports. And typically, it is the general education teacher who primarily is leading, and then the special education teacher who is supporting. However, it does not have to be that way. The two roles can swap. It is known, though, on the left of that graph as well, you will see an arrow that says the curriculum knowledge, planning, time allocation, level of trust, and then philosophical agreement. Those are key elements to successful co-teaching that both the general and special education teachers should apply and implement while working together. There are three C's of co-teaching that are important. They are collaboration, communication, and co-planning. In order to have a successful co-teaching implemented into your classroom, these three things are key to have between the general and special education teachers. Collaboration, finding a common planning time to sit down and really talk about goals um, and the structure of the education and how you want to implement that into your classroom is key. Communication, being able to be open and honest with each other, as well as have an open line of communication between each other is important as well. And then, like I said earlier with the collaboration, co-planning time is very important. And that's something that we'll look at a little further down in this presentation. So the goals for this research and the purpose was to show when co-teaching was implemented correctly with both general and special education teachers working cooperatively, the students who underwent co-teaching would score higher than those who did not. Another goal was to generate future co-teaching relationships with other staff members since as I said before, this is a fairly new model of teaching being implemented into our district and school. So the methodology, the setting was there's 4 fifth grade elementary math classrooms and an average of about 26 students in each class for a total of 104 students. 8 of the 104 students were identified with special needs and they received services according to their individual education plans or IEPs. The district is a fairly newer district and it is located in the suburb of Omaha, Nebraska. There's around 90% Caucasian, roughly 2.5% Asian, and 2.5% African American, and then about 4% are Hispanic. Of those students, roughly 10% were identified as needing special education services, and about 16% were high ability learners, and only about 0.5% were the education language learners, English language learners. Some background information, like I said before, the school is located in the suburbs of Omaha, Nebraska. The school enrollment, we have about 562 students with grades kindergarten through 5th grade. We are one of 9 elementary schools in the district, and students were randomly assigned to classrooms. And there are 2 inclusion classrooms that use the co-teaching method for math, and then there are 2 other classrooms that use just the general education classroom setting. The results of my study, the null hypothesis, were students who received co-teaching, those were labeled group 1, would not score better than students in traditional classrooms, group 2. The alternative hypothesis was students in co-taught classrooms would have a higher mean score than the students in a traditional classroom. Group 2's mean score was 224.6 with the standard deviation of 9.284. And Group 1's mean score was 223.1 with a standard deviation of 11.426. The Cohen D score was a negative 0.140, which means that there was a small effect size. The p-value was 0.313, which indicates that the null hypothesis of students who received co-teaching would not score better than the students in a traditional classroom is true. Some implications. The results did not show a large difference within the 2 groups. If we go back to the results, the mean scores are really only roughly 1 point away from each other. So there's really not that large of a difference between the 2. Some implications for this study was with the students is that it eliminates that stigma, and I talked about that a little bit earlier on this presentation, but it eliminates the stigma and it takes away that feeling for the special education students that they are different and they should be treated differently. Co-teaching also allows for peer teaching, and what I mean by that is that you will see with co-teaching, and I saw this quite a bit during the study, was that the special education students were mixed right in with their peers. And so the peers were helping each other out, teaching each other, and that included the special education students as well. They were teaching each other, teaching the special education students. So it wasn't just teacher driven, but it was instead the whole classroom driven, where student driven as well, where the students were working together to learn. An implication for the teachers was time, and then building professional relationships. So yes, this study does take quite a bit of planning time, and that is something that really needs to be thought through before implementing co-teaching, because It's not something that you can just put together overnight. It takes a lot of planning time and co-planning time between the general education and special education teachers, as well as administrative support. Um, However, with co-teaching, you build professional relationships with one another because you are spending so much time planning and looking together at the different scores and the different ways that you could co-teach. There were quite a few limitations, since the one limitation is that this is a new method of teaching to the district. So like I said earlier, that there wasn't a lot of training that was given to the teachers. And with this, the training was only given to the special education teachers. So the general education teachers were a bit confused with what the expectations were for the implementation of co-teaching. And it was kind of left to the special education teachers to teach their colleagues, which were the general education teachers. So doing this in future, I would allow for a lot more time and a lot more professional development for all teachers and administrators. The MAP assessment, which is the measure of academic performance, which was the dependent variable in this study, it was administered on the computer. This could be a limitation because some students may do better when given a paper and pencil type of test rather than a computer setting. Another limitation was the behavior of special education students. If they are on a behavior plan and they may not have had a good morning or a good day the day of testing, the behavior could affect their results. Another limitation was the common planning time. The general education teacher and myself were not given common planning time, and so we had to think creatively and come up with our own common planning time, which was normally before school twice a week. If I were to do this in the future, I would allow common planning time during the school day for both the general and special education teacher. Another recommendation for future research is to lengthen the study. I did this over a semester, and so I believe that in order to truly see whether co-teaching is effective or not, I think it needs to be done for a full year, because that will show beginning and end of year results instead of just beginning and middle of the year results. Another recommendation for future research is to look at expert advice and studies on how to co-plan and how people have done it in the past on finding common planning time during the school day. Because I know that scheduling is a huge conflict and can be hard to figure out. I would also like to look at the computer versus paper pencil testing and see if there is a big difference in scores when students are given a computer standardized test, whereas when they are given a paper and pencil standardized test. I also believe that there needs to be more research done on the individual styles of co-teaching, those 5 that we looked at earlier, because I believe that this could help teachers in the future look and use the most effective co-teaching style for them. Here are my references that I have used for this study. I hope that by doing this study, people are more open to using co-teaching, and I personally would like to look further into the different styles of co-teaching so I can build more professional relationships with other students in my building and successfully implement co-teaching in our classrooms. Thank you.